The rain didn't fall, it slammed. A solid curtain of water beating down on the Vermont backroads like fists. Somewhere between the gnarled pines and the twisting gravel bend, a figure moved, small, soaked, barely more than a shadow in a blue raincoat. Lucy Mae Callahan, 14, held something pressed against her chest, something shaking, breathing fast, and wet with more than rain. Headlights appeared, too fast. Tires screeched, a horn wailed. The car spun sideways, splashing through a ditch before skidding to a halt. In that split second, a scream, not human, high, sharp, wild. Then silence, only the rain, only the trees, only the girl, and the pair of gold eyes watching her from the woods. She should have run. Instead, she whispered, "It's okay, I've got you." She didn't know yet, but something in the forest had been waiting for that moment. Lucy Mae Callahan didn't like the bus. It was loud, smelled like hot vinyl and diesel, and the other kids, they had a way of looking at her that made her chest twist. So she walked home. Every day, rain or shine. That afternoon, the shine had disappeared. The clouds rolled over the Vermont hills like waves, thick, bruised, and brimming with thunder. The first drop hit her cheek just as she crossed the footbridge by Riverbend Hollow. The second slid down her neck. By the time she reached the fence line near Mr. Wexler's abandoned orchard, the rain was coming sideways. Still, she didn't turn back. She never did. Lucy was small for 14, sharp-cheeked, quiet-eyed, with long black hair she never brushed quite enough. Her raincoat was too big, a hand-me-down from her mother, worn at the elbows. It still smelled like lavender if she held it close. She'd been walking this path since she was 7, but before the divorce, before the move, before the silence. The woods had always been there, watching, holding secrets. Then she heard it. Not thunder, not wind, a cry, thin, ragged, piercing. She stopped, squinted into the grey-green blur of undergrowth near the old fence post. The sound came again. Not quite a meow, not a bird either. Something caught. Small, in pain. She pushed through the wet grass, her boots sloshing through muck. Under the broken ribs of a fallen pine, half buried in moss and rain-soaked leaves. It trembled, a tiny shape, brown-spotted, ears tipped with black, tufts twitching. A kitten? No, not quite. Its eyes glowed gold when they met hers, a bobcat, a baby, maybe 6 weeks old, soaked to the bone, chest heaving. One paw lifted, twisted at a wrong angle. It made the sound again, half cry, half chirp. Lucy froze. Her heart thumped in her throat. This was wild, this was danger, but it was also alone, just like her. She dropped to her knees, let the rain soak her hair. Reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the granola bar she always kept, just in case. Unwrapped it, slowly. Tore off a piece. "Hey," she whispered. "It's okay, I won't hurt you." The kitten didn't hiss. It didn't run, it just stared, like it was waiting. She placed the bit of food on a rock and slid it closer. The kitten sniffed, then lunged, snatching it in one quick bite, chewing frantically. That's when the thunder cracked, loud and close. The kitten yelped, bolted forward, and landed right against Lucy's chest, claws digging through her coat. She gasped, not from pain, from the shock of it, the weight, the wet, the wildness. For a long second, neither moved. Then Lucy did what no one in their right mind would have done. She wrapped her coat around the bobcat kitten and ran, back through the orchard, down the hill, across the bridge, her boots skidding on wet wood. She held the bundle tight against her ribs, feeling every tremble, every heartbeat. Another cry rang out behind her, this one from the woods, low, deep, Too large. She didn't stop, didn't look back. Not yet. The storm followed them home. Not with thunder anymore, but with a steady, whispering rain that softened everything. Colors, sounds, even time. Lucy's boots squelched through the mud, her breath visible in the chill. In her arms, the kitten had gone still. Not unconscious, just surrendered. She didn't go around back like usual. She went straight to the front door, up the wooden steps she'd memorized by heart. The third one creaked loudest, even in slippers. Her fingers, numb from the cold, fumbled the latch. The door banged open. "Lucy!" Her grandfather's voice, muffled from the den. She didn't answer. Her arms were shaking. The weight of what she carried pressed through her raincoat like a secret no one was supposed to see. She stepped into the kitchen, kicking the door shut behind her. The light was yellow, warm. It made the linoleum glow like honey. It smelled faintly of cedar and black coffee. And sawdust. It always smelled like sawdust. Walter Callahan appeared in the doorway, backlit like a scarecrow lit from behind. He wiped his hands on a rag, his flannel shirt rumpled and one suspender half off. "Lucy Mae Callahan," he said, taking one look. "What the hell is that?" The question struck like a snap of wind. Lucy opened her coat. A bundle of shivering fur peered out from inside, spotted, wide-eyed, limp. "A bobcat," Walter muttered. "Are you kidding me?" "She was alone," Lucy said quietly, "in the river woods." "Her paw? Something's wrong with it." Walter stepped forward slowly. The kitten hissed, a wet, pitiful sound, but it didn't fight. "Sweet Jesus," he murmured. "You brought a wild animal into the house." Lucy's jaw tightened. "I couldn't leave her." He ran a hand over his face, then pointed. "Table, towel, now!" She obeyed, setting the kitten, carefully, onto the checkered kitchen towel he'd grabbed from the drawer. The bobcat's sides heaved with each breath. Her fur was soaked and clumped together in stiff little knots. One of her front paws curled strangely beneath her. Walter fetched an old tackle box from the pantry, their animal kit. It still had Remus's name on it in faded Sharpie. He moved slowly, but with quiet skill. His big fingers, usually stiff, were oddly gentle now as he examined the paw, pressed gently, waited. "Sprain maybe," he said. "Not broken. She's young, still got baby teeth." Lucy didn't say anything. Her hands were clenched in the hem of her shirt. Walter looked at her sideways. "You think this is going to end like a fairy tale?" "No." "She's not yours to keep." "I know." They watched the kitten breathe. She looked up at them once. One eye half closed. Her chest still heaved, but slower now. "I think she's hungry." Walter sighed. "And I think I'm insane." He opened a can of tuna. Lucy reached for it, but paused. "I'll feed her." She spooned a little onto a dish, setting it near the kitten's nose. The kitten sniffed, chirped, then began licking frantically. The sound was delicate, wet, soft, desperate. Walter crossed his arms. "You're lucky she's not older. A full-grown bobcat would have taken your face off." She needed help. "So did Remus once," he said. "Didn't mean I found him in a lightning storm." That shut her up. She stared at the kitten, the way its ears twitched, the way it tucked one paw under itself like any house cat would. "What's her name?" he asked. Lucy blinked. "Thistle." "Sharp, huh?" "And soft," he grunted. "Figures." They made her a nest near the hearth, an old wooden fruit crate lined with flannel and the thickest towel they had. Lucy sat beside it for hours. The fire crackled low. Rain tapped the windows like fingers. Walter stayed up longer than usual, muttering about insurance and rabies and how this was exactly the kind of thing that'd end up on the news. He made a pot of soup. She didn't eat hers. "Eat," he said. "I'm fine." "You look like a ghost." "She's warmer now," Lucy murmured. She stopped shaking. Walter sighed. "You're too much like your mother." The silence after that was long, almost too long. Eventually, Walter retired to the den, leaving the girl and the wild thing alone. At midnight, Lucy sat cross-legged on the rug, a blanket wrapped around her. Her damp hair hung in ropes down her back. She watched the kitten sleep, twitching, dreaming. One ear flopped sideways like a crumpled leaf. She reached out once to touch it, then changed her mind. Outside, the wind picked up, the lights flickered, and somewhere beyond the tree line, something cried out. It wasn't a fox, not a coyote, lower, rounder, older. Lucy turned to the window. Just trees, just rain. She leaned closer to the glass, breath fogging the pane. There, movement, a shape, just beyond the yard fence. Still, silent, watching. Eyes yellow, reflective. She didn't scream, didn't move. A paw lifted, pressed to the fence post. One step forward, then gone. Thistle stirred in her sleep, chirped softly, curled tighter. Lucy backed away from the window. "She's looking for her," she whispered, then whispered it again as if that made it more real. "She's still out there." By morning, the world looked new. The storm had rinsed the sky clean, and now the mist clung to the ground like breath that hadn't quite disappeared. Everything was damp and waiting. Lucy stood barefoot on the porch, hugging her arms, eyes scanning the trees. The same trees that had always stood there, still, indifferent. But not this morning. Something had changed. The yard felt different, watched. Walter had already been out. He was a man of habits. Morning coffee, feed the chickens, mutter to himself about the state of things. But today he stood by the back gate, staring down. She walked up beside him, said nothing. He didn't turn to her. "There," he murmured. In the mud, pressed deep beside the fence post, was a print, too big for a dog, wider than a coyote, a bobcat, full-grown. Walter knelt, one hand on his knee. "She was here last night, close." Lucy's mouth went dry. "How close?" He pointed to a second print, then a third, leading toward the porch. "She came right up," he said, "right where you were standing." Lucy swallowed hard. The wind stirred the trees, brushing damp branches against one another, like the sound of hushed voices. They followed the tracks across the yard, slow, careful, reverent. It felt wrong to speak too loudly, as if it might draw her back. At the edge of the lawn, by the overgrown blackberry bush, they found it. A rabbit, laid gently on the ground, its neck cleanly broken, not torn, not eaten, left. Lucy knelt beside it. "It's a gift." Walter looked at her. Could be coincidence. She brought it for Thistle. She might have just dropped it, spooked. "No," Lucy whispered. "She left it for her." Walter didn't argue. He just exhaled, low and heavy. Back inside, Thistle was awake, sitting up in her crate, blinking at them with those wild gold eyes. Her injured paw still curled awkwardly, but she didn't flinch when Lucy knelt beside her. Walter wrapped the rabbit in butcher paper, placed it in the freezer. "In case Fish and Wildlife wants to study it," he said. But the way he said it, Lucy knew he didn't believe his own excuse. That evening, the fog rolled in again. Thicker this time. The trees vanished behind a wall of pale grey, like they'd been erased. Walter sat in his recliner, reading a book he didn't seem to turn the pages of. Lucy was by the window, her knees pulled to her chest, the blanket around her shoulders. Thistle lay beside the hearth. ears twitching every few seconds. The clock ticked, the wind moaned softly through the eaves, and then light. The porch sensor. Lucy stood in one motion, heart pounding. She crossed the room without thinking, barefoot again, breath held. There, just beyond the porch steps, was the shape. Massive, still, a shadow of muscle and fur, tufted ears, short tail, the mother. She didn't move, she didn't run, she was watching. Lucy opened the door, slowly. The creak of the hinge felt deafening. The bobcat didn't flinch. Lucy stepped out. The cold wood stung her feet. She didn't speak, didn't reach. The animal's eyes met hers, gold on hazel. Lucy's throat tightened. Behind her, Thistle chirped once, quiet, fragile. The mother's ears swiveled. She shifted her weight, the slightest movement. Lucy felt it. Something passed between them. Recognition, not of faces, but of presence, of what was shared. She crouched, slowly, laying a hand flat on the porch. Open, empty. "I know," she whispered. "I know you're her mother." The bobcat blinked, once. Then, without sound, turned. She stepped down the stairs and vanished into the fog. Lucy stood there for a long time. Long after the light blinked off. Long after her feet had gone numb. She didn't move until she heard the sound, not footsteps, not wind. A soft thud. She looked down. At the base of the steps lay something delicate, a feather, long, white, clean. Not from a bird she recognized, not from anything that belonged in this forest. She picked it up, fingers trembling, a message, a symbol. She brought it inside, laid it gently beside Thistle's crate. The kitten sniffed it, then curled tighter into herself and slept. Walter didn't ask, he just watched her. That night, Lucy dreamed of trees with no roots, of voices made of wind, of gold eyes that held memory. She woke suddenly because something, somewhere, was screaming. Not a person, not quite an animal either, something between. It echoed through the trees like it didn't belong to this world. A cry of mourning or warning, maybe both. Walter sat upright in bed, his hand already reaching for the flashlight. Lucy stood at the window, her fingers against the glass, her lips parted. Then came the sound no one could forget, like a scream, but not human, not fully. The scream had faded, but it stayed inside her, like an echo under the ribs. Morning brought no sunshine, just haze clinging to the windows like frost. Neither of them spoke much. Walter stood outside for a while, hands on his hips, scanning the yard with tired eyes. Lucy sat beside Thistle, watching the kitten twitch in her sleep. A front paw jerked, a soft whimper slipped out. She heard it too, Lucy whispered. They didn't go near the woods that day. By dusk, the silence had settled like a weight over the house. No birds, no wind, not even the usual chirping from the creek. Just quiet, unnatural quiet. Walter locked the doors early, though they both knew it wouldn't matter if she wanted in. Lucy closed the curtains, but still checked the porch every hour just in case. Thistle was restless, pacing the kitchen, sniffing the door, whining under her breath. She didn't eat, only stared toward the window with her ears flat, tail twitching like a slow metronome. "She's waiting," Lucy said finally. "She knows." Walter looked up from his paper. "Knows what?" "That she's not coming back." He folded the page slowly. "Maybe she is." Lucy shook her head. Not the way she did before. They didn't say what they were both thinking, that the mother's scream in the night hadn't just been warning. It had been goodbye. Then at exactly 9:13 p.m., the porch light flicked on. Lucy froze. Walter stood, quietly setting his cup down. They walked to the door together. She was back, the mother. But not like before. This time she didn't stay on the edge of the yard. She came up the steps, all the way to the door. Her coat was slick with moisture, her sides rising and falling fast, like she'd run far. Her eyes locked on the window, calm, unreadable. And in her mouth, something. A strip of fabric, dark red, frayed at the edge. She laid it down on the mat like an offering.
Lucy opened the door without a word. The mother didn't flinch. Up close, she was breathtaking, powerful. Scars marked her flanks. One ear was torn at the edge. Her breath came in visible clouds, but her gaze, steady, grounded. She looked past Lucy, into the house, toward Thistle. Lucy stepped aside. Thistle crept forward slowly, cautiously, her paw still limping. She paused just inside the doorframe, blinking at the figure on the porch. Then she chirped, a high, short sound,
full of something more than instinct, recognition. The mother made no sound. She just turned her head slightly, slowly. Her body didn't move, but something in her changed, softened. Thistle stepped onto the porch. The cold made her hesitate, but not for long. She approached her mother, slowly, step by step. Then she stopped, 6 inches between them, the space of a breath. The mother lowered her head. Thistle pressed her forehead against her chest. Lucy watched unmoving, tears stinging without warning. Then it happened. The mother stepped back, not away, just enough to look at Lucy again. And then, gently, she nudged the strip of fabric forward. It brushed against Lucy's bare foot. She picked it up. It was a scarf, old, threadbare, maroon with flecks of gold. She knew it. She had seen it in a photograph. Her mother used to wear it wrapped around her braid. The scarf she wore the last day Lucy saw her. She staggered back. The porch spun.
Her breath caught. How? Walter stepped forward quickly, steadying her with one hand. Lucy, what is it? Lucy couldn't finish. That's my mum's. The mother bobcat gave a soft, guttural sound, somewhere between a growl and a breath. Then she turned, slowly, one paw after another, down the steps, back into the yard. She didn't look back. Thistle stayed on the porch, watching, torn between the wild and the warmth. Her tail flicked, her ears tilted. Then she turned back,
walked into the house, and the porch was empty. Walter locked the door behind them. Lucy sank to the floor, the scarf in her lap, damp and smelling of pine and fir. How did she get this? Walter sat beside her, slowly, like his knees didn't belong to him. You think your mom's out there? I don't know. Her voice cracked. I don't think she's coming back either. They didn't speak again that night. Thistle slept by the hearth, curled in a tight ball, tail tucked to her chin. Lucy sat up until the fire turned to embers, turning the scarf over in her fingers. Just before sleep claimed her, another sound came. Not from outside, from Thistle. She was dreaming, legs twitching, breathing fast. Then she made the sound, not a meow, not a chirp, that same strange, impossible scream they'd heard in the night, but smaller, soft, like a memory passing through her in sleep. Lucy blinked, her heart paused, and for a moment, just a moment, she thought she understood. That sound hadn't come from the mother alone, it had come from both of them. And maybe from something else too, something older, something that waited in the trees. Because the scream that returned that night wasn't human, not fully, but it remembered what it was to love. Morning came without warning. No thunder, no heavy clouds, just a soft amber light spilling through the windows, brushing everything it touched in gold. The house felt different, as though something sacred had passed through it overnight. Lucy opened her eyes slowly, still curled on the rug by the hearth. Her hand remained wrapped around the maroon scarf. She could still smell the pine on it, the wild, the silence between heartbeats. Thistle was already awake, sitting upright at the kitchen threshold, her ears tilted forward, eyes sharp, alert, not frightened. She limped forward, but the limp was less now, barely a hesitation, as if the memory of pain was fading. Lucy reached out, ran a finger down her spine. "You waited for her," she whispered, "and she waited for you." Walter stood at the kitchen window, his coffee untouched. He hadn't said much since the scarf. He didn't need to. Then he stepped back from the glass, blinked, stared. "Lucy," he said, "you need to see this." They walked out together, barefoot across the porch, breath fogging faintly in the cool morning air. At the bottom step, the gift waited. Not food this time, not prey, a stone, perfectly round, black and smooth from river time, placed with quiet care. Atop it, 3 objects, a rabbit's tooth, a strip of moss, and a small feather, smaller than the first one. Soft grey, downy. Lucy knelt, hands trembling. She didn't touch it, just stared. "It's an offering," she said, "but not just for Thistle." Walter knelt beside her. "It's for us." The items meant something. She could feel it, not in her mind, in her chest. A language without words, life, death, memory, the feather for fragility, the moss for healing, the tooth for what had been survived. "She's not just giving," Lucy said, her voice barely audible. "She's teaching." They left it where it was, not out of fear, but reverence. Inside, the world was still.
Even the clock seemed quieter. Walter made breakfast, but neither of them ate. Thistle curled on the windowsill, soaking in the sun, tail flicking gently. She stared out toward the tree line, but didn't cry anymore. By noon, Lucy brought out her sketchbook. She hadn't touched it since her mother left. Now her fingers itched. She painted the gift, the scarf, the bobcat's eyes, the scream. Each image came to life in stillness. The stone, with its symbols, went on to the mantle.
She didn't explain it. It didn't need explaining. Later that afternoon, she took Thistle out into the yard, just the edge. The kitten sniffed the breeze, ears swiveling. She didn't try to run, didn't search. She just sat beside Lucy in the grass, and they watched the forest breathe. By evening, something had changed again. Thistle paced the living room, but not in distress, like a clock winding down, like something inside her was waiting for a bell that hadn't chimed yet. Lucy sat cross-legged on the floor, the scarf wrapped loosely around her wrist. "She's not coming tonight," she whispered. "Not like before." Walter nodded from the doorway. Maybe she doesn't need to. But they were both wrong. Because that night, as the moon crested the hill and the street lamps in town began to flicker on, something stirred in the forest, not by their house. Downtown, at the gas station on Hollow Bend Road, the security camera caught it first, a blur crossing the pavement, not fast, not running, walking, head high, the mother bobcat. She moved through the quiet town like she belonged there, past the diner, past the post office, past the old church with the broken bell. Everywhere she went, lights flickered, dogs barked behind fences, motion sensors clicked on, one after the other. At the edge of town, she stopped beside the war memorial, sat, still, unmoving, and turned to look directly into the camera for a full 6 seconds. Then she vanished again. By morning, the footage had spread, first through neighbors' texts, then the town's Facebook page, then the news. They called it a hoax, a prank. Some said it was a digital trick, others said it was a warning. but Lucy knew the truth. She saw the way the mother looked into the lens, not as a beast, but as something older than fear, something that remembered, a teacher, a guardian, a witness, and maybe something more. But the mother wasn't finished. That night, the whole town would see her truth. It began with silence. Then the power flickered. At 8:42 p.m., across the sleepy town of Edgefield, porch lights blinked out. Radios stuttered, television snapped to black. For a moment, the town was suspended in stillness, like something had pulled the breath from its lungs. Lucy stood at her window, staring out into the dark. She wasn't afraid, not this time. "She's coming," she whispered. Walter stood behind her, arms crossed tight. He didn't ask how she knew. He just watched the trees. Thistle paced by the door. Her tail was low, ears turned like satellite dishes toward the wind. But there was no panic in her steps, only anticipation. Then light, but not electric. Torches, cell phone flashlights, car beams turned toward the square. People had gathered, dozens of them, drawn without knowing why, shopkeepers, teenagers, families in slippers and coats. The mayor, a mail carrier, still in uniform. No one spoke. They just stood, eyes turned toward the old elm in the center of town. And from the shadows beneath it, she emerged. The mother, slow, silent. Her paws made no sound on the pavement. She walked through the crowd like water, parting through reeds. No fear, no hesitation. Her eyes swept over them, calm, unreadable. Someone gasped. Someone else whispered, "That's her." Phones lifted, cameras clicked, but the moment refused to be captured. What the lens saw was a bobcat. But what the people felt, that was different. She passed the playground, brushed against the steps of the church, and stopped before the Veterans Wall. There, at the base of the stone, she sat and waited. Lucy pressed her hand to the glass. Her heart thundered in her chest. "She's showing them," she said. "She's not hiding anymore." Walter didn't answer, but his eyes were glassy, wet at the corners. Thistle let out a soft chirp, a breath more than a sound. Then, in the square, the bobcat rose. She walked once around the tree. One slow circle, then stepped toward the edge of the crowd, toward a little girl with wide brown eyes and bare feet, standing beside her father. The bobcat stopped inches away, tilted her head. The girl didn't move. The air held still. Then the bobcat bowed her head, lowered herself all the way to the ground, a gesture older than language. And slowly, impossibly, the little girl stepped forward and touched her. One hand, light as breath, fur met skin, wild met wonder. Then the bobcat stood, turned, and walked back toward the woods. No one followed. No one dared, because they all knew. Somehow they knew they hadn't just seen an animal. They had witnessed a truth, a reminder that wildness wasn't always a thing to fear. Sometimes it came bearing memory or warning or love. Lucy sat down slowly, heart still racing. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from reverence. "She gave herself to them," she said. "She gave them what she gave me." Walter put a hand on her shoulder. "You were the first," he said, "but not the last." And in the yard below, the wind stirred the grass. Not a storm, just movement, like something leaving or returning. The next morning, there were no new prints, no stone on the steps, no offering, only the quiet. The kind of quiet that meant something had ended or begun. Lucy stepped out into the dew-covered grass. The sun had just crested the ridgeline, casting golden bands across the porch rails. Thistle followed close behind, silent and still. Together they walked the edge of the field, stopping where the yard blurred into trees, where the grass met moss and roots, curved up like sleeping giants. Lucy didn't speak. Neither did Thistle. She just opened her hand. Inside it was the scarf. Soft again now, worn thin at the edges. Her mother's. Once, maybe still. Lucy tied it gently to the branch of a young alder tree, letting it hang there like a banner. The red caught the morning breeze and fluttered softly. A sign if anyone ever came looking. A signal, maybe, to something watching. And as she stood back, something caught her eye. Nestled in the crook between two stones was a single feather, white, straight, longer than any bird around these parts. The second one. Lucy knelt, picked it up with both hands like it might break. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. The message was clear. She looked at Thistle. The kitten sat calmly, ears forward, face lit with sunrise. "You ready?" Lucy asked. Thistle stood and walked toward the trees. Only a few steps, then she paused, turned back, and blinked. Slowly. That soft, wordless gesture she'd done since the first day, since the rain. Then she walked back and brushed her body gently against Lucy's shin. A nuzzle, not clinging, just presence. They didn't need to speak. They had silence. They had the feather. That evening, Lucy placed the feather in the box with the scarf, a box she'd never planned to use again. She wrote one thing on the lid in pencil, where only she would see it. "Still here." Not a goodbye. A promise. Later, as the sun dipped below the tree line, she sat by the hearth, Thistle curled in her lap. The fire crackled, slow and steady. The walls of the house felt warmer, not smaller, just fuller. She thought about everything that had happened, how the wild had walked into their lives and left them changed, not with scars, but with space. Space for the unknown, for the sacred, for memory. She glanced to the mantel, where the river stone still sat, bare now, but somehow still pulsing with presence, a reminder. Not everything wild stays wild, not everything lost stays gone. Some things return in silence, and some stories don't need words, just presence. And as the screen dimmed and the music faded, the final image appeared, a single white feather, floating, spinning slowly in a shaft of golden light, then fading into the hush of twilight. If this story touched your heart, stay close. Here on Paw Prints and Stories, we believe some bonds never end,